For years, Nintendo has been one of the most beloved video game companies of all time. From high-quality games for all ages to memorable staff members like the Reginator, people have adored Nintendo and thought they could do no wrong. However, after the Switch's launch, their dark side came into the spotlight as many people began catching a glimpse at their more questionable corporate decisions. This isn't actually a new thing, however. Nintendo has been involved in a number of controversies in the past, whether it was their fault or not. Let this be a lesson that no company is as squeaky clean as they appear. This is a history of Nintendo's biggest controversies. Our first controversy actually stems from Nintendo's first huge hit overseas, the original arcade Donkey Kong. The game was a massive hit, and people went crazy for the Jumping Carpenter Jumpman and the furious titular ape. However, not everyone loved this title, specifically the folks at Universal Studios. The legal team at Universal argued that the Donkey Kong name was infringing on their copyright of the King Kong franchise. I'm sure you've noted the naming similarities at least once in your life. Universal, represented by Townley and Updike, claimed that the naming and synopsis of the Donkey Kong game would confuse consumers. However, Nintendo's hired attorney John Kirby argued that the King Kong mythos was actually in the public domain. Even worse was Universal themselves had admitted they didn't own the rights to the character in a previous court case against RKO General. Kirby went on to say that even if Universal did own the rights and the game name was infringing on the copyright, people still wouldn't confuse the two properties anyway. King Kong was, to quote Kirby, a ferocious gorilla in quest of a beautiful woman. Donkey Kong, on the other hand, was like a parody, being more cartoony and nonsensical. And this isn't far from the truth behind the project either. Donkey Kong was originally conceptualized as a Popeye game, so this argument was as strong as Bluto, which is very strong. Popeye references. When all was said and done, Universal wound up paying Nintendo $1.8 million. And in an ironic turn of events, Judge Robert Sweet ruled that the King Kong game from Tiger Electronics, licensed by Universal, was an infringement of Donkey Kong. My, such delicious irony. To thank John Kirby for a job well done, Nintendo gave him a sailboat named the Donkey Kong, and exclusive rights to use the Donkey Kong name for sailboats. It's also believed that he was the inspiration behind the name of Nintendo's pink puffball, Kirby. Quite the way to be welcomed into the American market, but it showed that Nintendo held promise for making it big overseas. Sure, this one had more to do with the video game industry as a whole, but then President of Nintendo of America, Howard Lincoln, arrived to court and totally chewed out Sega, so I guess it counts. This refers to a series of hearings in the Senate regarding video game violence. Some of the biggest culprits for this argument at the time were Mortal Kombat for the excessive use of blood and gore, Doom for its shooting McGunslinger gameplay, and Night Trap. Yes, this fumbling B-movie of a game was on the same level as Doom and Mortal Kombat. I mean, sure. Lethal Enforcers was another game of contention, but that one had you playing as a police officer shooting robbers and drug dealers, so I personally don't think it counts as much. One of the most infamous moments of these court hearings was the aforementioned Howard Lincoln accusing Sega of having a shoddy rating system and really only implementing it after Night Trap started getting criticism.
Furthermore, I can't let you sit here and buy this nonsense that this Sega Night Trap game was somehow only meant for adults. The fact of the matter is, this is a copy of the packaging. There was no rating on this game at all when the game was introduced. Small children bought this at Toys R Us, and he knows that as well as I do. When they started getting heat about this game, Then they adopted the rating system and put ratings on it. But today, just as I'm sitting here, you can go into a Toys R Us store or a Walmart or a Kmart, and you know as well as I do that you can buy this product and no one, certainly no sales clerk at retail, is going to challenge you.
Of course, he also went on to say this.
And let me say that for the record, I want to state that Night Trap will never appear on a Nintendo system.
Thankfully, this story does have a sort of happy ending. After seeing the distasteful content in some games and Sega's attempts at their own rating system, the general public agreed that video games should have a universal age rating system, just like movies and TV shows. Yes, this is what led to the creation of the Entertainment Software Ratings Board, or ESRB for short. Now yes, there is still some occasional backlash towards game companies and the ESRB, but let's be real, it's not their fault. Because it's totally the game dev's fault for you buying Call of Duty for your little Jimmy. You know, a mature rated game for ages 17 and up. This infamous story regards the original Mario Party on the Nintendo 64. A few minigames in the title, namely the 1 vs 3 games Tug-O-War and Paddle Battle, and the one-player game Pedal Power, required you to rotate the stick as fast as possible. Since your thumb is slower and could slip off the stick easily, many players resorted to using their palms to spin the stick around, although this would cause blisters or even skin tears. According to some accounts, kids even suffered second-degree burns or got tetanus shots. Nintendo responded by spending thousands of dollars on gloves for the consumers that called in and complained. Despite the backlash nowadays, only around 100 parents complained at the time. Given that Mario Party sold over 1 million units in the US, I think it's a no-brainer that this incident got blown out of proportion over the years. Nevertheless, this controller still sucks. Like, what even is this thing? Not comfortable? The 3 prongs? I don't get it. Perfect Dark was released in 2000 for the Nintendo 64. The game was a spiritual successor to GoldenEye 007, featuring new characters, improved AI, and a ton of technical advances for the N64 system, most of which came from the expansion pack peripheral. Many people even stand by the game to this very day, whether it be the original N64 version or the enhanced re-releases on Xbox systems. So if the game was so successful, why is it in this video? Well, this was the first M-rated game endorsed by Nintendo, who are known even today as a family-friendly company, the Disney of video games, if you will. Seeing them promoting a mature game with violence and vulgar language was a bit of a culture shock to many people. This remains one of the few times Nintendo has ever ventured into M-rated territory. I think the only other instances were Conker's Bad Fur Day, another rare published N64 title, and Eternal Darkness: Sanity's Requiem on the GameCube, which was actually published by Nintendo themselves. Still, all of these are huge cult classics, so I doubt people will be up in arms about them today. Who's the girl next door living in the haunted mansion? You'd better learn her name or she'll take you to hell! That was stupid. But this controversy stems from the WarioWare series, more specifically the English versions of WarioWare Touched. In the game, you can unlock a souvenir called the Turntable. This allows you to play characters' songs, speed them up, or even reverse them. However, it's been said that if you spin the record for Ashley's theme fast enough, she'll be heard saying, "I have granted kids to hell." Many people believed this was a hidden message in the song and that Nintendo wanted young WarioWare fans to join the occult. Right. Just like all those claims about Led Zeppelin being Satanists or Freddie Mercury liking to smoke weed, it's all a bunch of BS. The truth is, a bunch of syllables are skipped over when the song is sped up so much in the turntable. On screen are listed the original lyrics to the song, and in red are the played syllables. "I of grand this kit Supan." Because of how distorted the audio is, especially coming through the DS speakers, it's easy to see how this could be misheard as I have granted kids to hell. But Nintendo recruiting new cult members? Give me a break. You'd think Mario Party 8 would be the last place to find offensive language, but for British players, that wound up being far from the truth. On the board, Shy Guy's Perplex Express, Kamek will occasionally come by and change up the layout of the board, saying,
"Magic Koopa magic, turn the train spastic, make this ticket tragic."
This may not seem like much to American players, but the word spastic is highly offensive in the UK, as it is a derogatory term towards those with disabilities. Because of this, the game had to be recalled, and the second line of the rhyme had to be changed to,
"Turn the train red."
This has led to other games having their dialogue changed between regions before release to avoid similar incidents, such as the case with Super Paper Mario. In the American release of the game, Dementio mentions the shag on Luigi's lip, obviously his mustache. In British versions, however, he just calls Luigi a pushover. This is because in the UK, shag means, well, you know. Yeah. I'm sure you all know about PETA by now, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. On the surface, they seem like a fine animal rights organization. But as I'm sure you know by now, these whack jobs have done some extremely tasteless things to get their message across. From falsely claiming milk is linked to autism to dressing up as Klansmen at a dog show. And yes, even dipping their toes into the video game industry. Nintendo and PETA don't exactly have the best relationship because of some of the things Nintendo has put in their games. Only a few weeks after the release of the Nintendo Switch and the game 1-2 Switch, the president of PETA wrote a letter of complaint to the Big N complaining about the milk minigame. Ingrid Newkirk requested that they make the game more realistic by adding, and I quote, "the violent insemination of female cows on what the dairy industry itself refers to as a rape rack." What the actual fuck? People were quick to call PETA out on this letter, even saying some of the information provided in the letter is flat out wrong and manipulative. As you can guess, Nintendo didn't listen to this and kept the minigame in the final product. Then there's that time PETA protested in front of Blather's Museum in Animal Crossing to empty the fish tanks, which is just silly. But that's not what you expected me to talk about, was it? Fair enough, it's impossible to ignore the video game parodies. Super Chick Sisters, Mama Kills Animals, Super Tofu Boy, Mario Kills Tanuki, Pokemon Black and Blue. These games have poked fun at popular video games, primarily Nintendo ones, to highlight their dark truths. Super Chick Sisters and its sequel, New Super Chick Sisters, star these Mario and Luigi ripoffs trying to rescue Pamela Anderson from the evil Colonel Sanders and Ronald McDonald. Yes, I'm dead serious. Mama Kills Animals is a very gory and disgusting parody of the wholesome Cooking Mama franchise. Like, come on, I add gizzard to my gravy, you don't. Super Tofu Boy is perhaps their most infamous game. Apparently Meat Boy is an abuser, and Tofu Boy has to rescue Bandage Girl from his bloody jealous rage. Team Meat were actually so impressed by this fan game that they added Tofu Boy as a secret playable character in Super Meat Boy. However, he is the worst character in the game, with terrible speed and jumps to really stick it to them. Mario Kills Tanuki, or Super Tanuki Skin 2D, has you playing as a Tanuki trying to get his skin back from Mario. Because Tanuki suits are totally made from actual Tanuki skin, yeah, great job. A spokesperson from the group even had to pull a Schrodinger's douchebag and say, "Don't worry guys, it's just a joke, we swear!" And finally, Pokemon Black and Blue and Pokemon Red, White, and Blue are parodies of the Pokemon series. Black and Blue tasks you with recruiting abused Pokemon and fighting back against these supposedly cruel trainers. Also, apparently Charon is an underage alcoholic in this version. Huh. Red, White, and Blue has you leading a legendary party of 4 to take down McDonald's. Pikachu, Jigglypuff, Miltank, and Grimace? Why would one of McDonald's own mascots be fighting against them? So yeah, these games, not very pleasant. It's no wonder why many people, even devoted animal rights activists, hate PETA. Thankfully now it seems like the group has slowly shied away from harassing these companies and even acknowledged the death of Nintendo president Satoru Iwata. But then they promote chick sisters in the very next sentence, so can you really call that a heartwarming message? Man, anybody else miss Tomodachi Life? It was a delightful life simulation on the 3DS where you fill an island with your Miis and watch them go about their lives. It was honestly a lot of fun, and most of that fun came from the weird relationships your Miis could get into.
While Luigi's just gonna stand there and grant him 3 wishes while he scratches his ass.
However, there was one major thing holding it back. Same-sex relationships. You see, in the game, you could only have a male Mii date and marry a female Mii, and that's it. No options for gay marriages or anything. Sure, you could edit a Mii's gender, but that just makes the rest of the game weird. Unless you're into gender bending and mpreg, in which case, more power to you. While yes, same-sex marriages are highly taboo in Japan, fans hoped that the localized versions would include this feature, but nope. Various campaigns and pleas have sprouted up from the LGBT+ community under the hashtag Miiquality to bring this issue to Nintendo's attention. And in a way, they succeeded. Nintendo responded by saying while they can't include something like this in a mere patch, they will try to be more inclusive in sequels. They sort of kept this promise, as the spiritual successor Miitopia for the 3DS and Switch allows Miis to go on outings together and become really close friends, even soulmates if you're dedicated enough. Nevertheless, we still have yet to see another mainline Tomodachi game with same-sex relationships included. Oh boy, this is a fun one. On April 22nd, 2015, the Nintendo of America Twitter account posted the following. Reply "wah" for hashtag WaluigiWednesday. Reply flower emoji for hashtag WiggerWednesday. Based on the picture, they meant Wiggler, a common caterpillar enemy in the Mario games. However, by missing one letter, they made a grave mistake. You see, Wigger is a portmanteau of white and, a racial slur. You know the one. That should tell you everything you need to know. However, the majority of people weren't offended by this misspelling. Rather, they fully embraced it and turned it into a meme of sorts. But that didn't stop Nintendo from apologizing in a follow-up tweet. When tweeting about one of our characters, we missed a letter. Oops, sorry about that. Thank God this happened in 2015. I can't imagine how Twitter would react if this happened today. Oh, Pokemon Go. How I love and hate thee. Fun way to collect Pokemon, gives me some exercise. Heated up my old phone and drained the battery to Kingdom Come. Whether you played it or not, this game was everywhere back in 2016. No one could shut up about it. But this immense popularity came at a cost. Sure, it boosted awareness of local businesses, physical activity, and augmented reality games, but it also yielded some dangerous consequences for distracted players. While people are getting more active, they're not exactly looking where they're going. This has led to countless leg injuries and even worse, depending on if they were a distracted pedestrian or a distracted driver. 4 teens in the St. Louis, Missouri area lured unsuspecting players to their location and robbed them. A Wyoming woman even stumbled upon a dead body while hunting a water type. While this can ultimately be attributed to our society and people just being, well, stupid, the game isn't entirely innocent. Pokestops are landmarks in the game you can visit for extra supplies. These can be anything from community parks to statues to historical buildings. However, they could also be graveyards, police stations, the 9/11 memorial, and other private properties. Supposedly, even Auschwitz was available. Yes, you can catch Pokemon at a Nazi concentration camp. There's plenty more to this game, such as data tracking via your Google account, third-party cheating apps like Pokevision, and the absolute disaster that was Pokemon Go Fest 2017. But even with all this bad press, the game has accrued billions of dollars throughout its life, currently has a 4.1 average rating on Google Play, and is still receiving updates to this very day. It may not be talked about as much as it was a couple years ago, but it's still as lively as ever. Oh boy, this one hurts. And it's not even Nintendo's fault. The original box art for Super Mario Odyssey looked like this, with a little piece in the bottom left showing Mario standing in the middle of the Sand Kingdom, wearing a sombrero and poncho. This outfit and the town of Tostarena in general were based on Mexican culture, as the director of the game, Kenta Modokura, really likes Mexico. Despite this, I guess people saw this outfit as offensive and that it was cultural appropriation? Nintendo later swapped out the screenshot to a different one of Mario swimming through the Lake Kingdom. It's never been made official if it was because of the backlash or because the Lake Kingdom screenshot was more visually interesting. I'm gonna be real, I really hate this controversy, especially since it wasn't even Mexicans that complained. Chances are it was a bunch of internet snowflakes who get offended by everything, while actual Mexican fans seem to enjoy Poncho Mario, even finding the act of removing the image more offensive than the image itself. According to Aguirre MA on Reddit, I hope I pronounced that right, as a Mexican dude, I'm seriously disappointed. What's wrong with Mario happily playing the guitar while using a sombrero and a poncho? Yeah, I know it's a stereotype, but it isn't even a bad one. Mexicans love to see their culture and stereotypes properly represented. That's the reason why characters like Speedy Gonzales are so loved here. You know what kind of stereotypes we don't like? Narco, cartels, drug dealers, lazy and drunk people, and basically everything Trump has said of us to sum up. It would be nice of Nintendo to undo this change. Now I fear of the complete removal of the Mexico level in the game. Who knows for certain whether Nintendo knew about this Mexican stereotyping episode or not. We may never know for sure, but what I do know for sure is that this was a really stupid controversy. Hoo boy, Nintendo Switch Online. Where to even start with this mess? It was announced before the Switch launched that the system would receive paid online play at some point. This understandably confused and annoyed a lot of consumers. Sure, Xbox and PlayStation systems have paid online, but Nintendo stuck it out with free online. Now, that's no longer the case. Nintendo Switch Online launched September 18th, 2018. A year and a half after the Switch launched, what? They kept on pushing it back further and further, trying to make sure it's of the highest quality. Promotional material for the service highlights 5 primary features included with an NSO subscription, and all of these have their faults. First is, of course, the online play. As stated before, Nintendo had free online services even while Xbox Live Gold and PlayStation Plus existed. With this new price tag, many hoped the online would be improved from past systems, but this couldn't be any further from the truth. Nintendo's online gameplay is based on a peer-to-peer system. What this means is, instead of using dedicated servers for connecting players together, the Switch connects directly to other systems, with one player being the host. It doesn't matter how fast your internet is, it depends on the stability of your connectivity to other systems. This means while smooth gameplay is a lot smoother, when it dips hard, and bad connections will break the entire room rather than disconnect just one person. Now, peer-to-peer gameplay can work in some cases. Certain online games on the Switch work with little to no hassle like Mario Kart. Other games like Smash Ultimate are more of a mixed bag. Sometimes you'll get a smooth as silk match, and other times you'll get a laggy mess. And then you have games like Mario Maker 2 and Mario Tennis Aces, which just chug along like molasses. Compare this to the more reliable dedicated server-based gameplay on other consoles. Yikes. The worst part has to be that this is what Nintendo has been doing for years. The shoddy online wasn't worth complaining about back then because it was the mid-2000s and it was completely free. Now, in 2021, Nintendo's online strategy has barely improved, only we now have to pay money for it. Nice. The second headlining feature of NSO is a retro game library, dedicated apps to play all the NES and Super NES games you could ask for. As you can guess, this just isn't satisfactory anymore. These same exact games have been re-released time and time again since 2006, only now they're being drip-fed slower and slower. Sure, we have some cool picks in America, like finally getting Mario's Super Picross and the original Panel Dipon, but it took a while for us to get these. It took them almost a year to put out Donkey Kong 3 and Wrecking Crew. How the hell does that happen? Also, a lot of well-known and cult classic picks are still not on the service. NES Golf and Pinball, Urban Champion, Earthbound, and Super Mario RPG are still somehow missing. Not to mention the other consoles previously offered through Virtual Console. Nintendo 64, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Nintendo DS. All of these were available on past Nintendo hardware, but the Switch is still stuck with just NES and Super NES games. The third bullet point is cloud saves. What this means is game data is saved not only to your system, but also in an online server. That way, if your console breaks or you want to upgrade to a newer hardware revision, you can easily download your data without having to start over. Why do we need to pay for this again? I know PlayStation did this too, but that's equally as scummy. Why do we need to pay for the privilege of our save files being protected? Also, not every Switch game supports cloud saves. Most of them do, but a couple don't. Now, for games like Civilization 6 or Dead by Daylight, that makes sense, as they have their own built-in cloud save and even cross-save programs. As for some of the others, it's to prevent cheating in online games, which sometimes makes sense and sometimes doesn't. But then explain to me how the crap New Super Lucky's Tale and Color's End Kids don't support cloud saves. Like, what? Also, the way cloud saves work for Animal Crossing New Horizons is a bit wonky, but it's better than nothing. Fourth is the mobile app. Does anyone actually use this thing? The app is mainly used for voice chat and 3 game-specific services. Let's start with the voice chat. It's pointless. Wanna know why? Here, just watch. Easier to set up, clearer audio, whole 9 yards. As for the game services, they're fine. It's mostly just supplemental stuff like checking stats and screenshots, nothing too fancy. The most useful one I'd say is NookLink. Using the keyboard on your phone is so much more convenient than the in-game one. And lastly is something called special offers. What do these entail? The privilege of buying overpriced NES and Super NES controllers, discount vouchers that aren't given away anymore, exclusive items that really aren't all that useful, and game trials because God forbid Nintendo give away full games for free. Xbox Live Gold who? You also get Tetris 99 and Pac-Man 99, 2 really fun Battle Royale games, but it's not worth it for these alone. All in all, the Nintendo Switch Online service is an absolute bust. No matter how many times Nintendo re-uploads the overview trailer, they're still gonna get a wave of dislikes from angry players. Is it cheaper than Xbox and PlayStation's offerings? Yes, $20 a year is a lot cheaper than the alternatives. But does that make the service worth it? Hell no. God, this video turned into an NSO rant. Let's just move on to the next controversy, shall we? What was #BringBackNationalDex? This campaign, also known as Dexit, was a highly controversial campaign against Game Freak, the developers of the Pokemon games, for their decision to remove the National Dex. The National Pokédex, or National Dex, was a numbered lineup of every single Pokemon in existence, being featured in all generations in some way, whether directly through the games themselves in the post-game, or through a transfer program like Pokemon Bank. However, once Generation 8 and its accompanying title Sword and Shield got revealed, it was announced the National Dex would not see a return. Director Junichi Masuda said that only Pokemon that appeared in the Galar Pokédex would be transferable. Even worse, the National Dex could be completely abandoned for good. Masuda claims this is to improve models and animations in the games going forward. I totally understand this argument, there are nearly 900 Pokemon and counting in the series, but actually taking a look at these supposedly improved models and animations... yeah... People were not buying this excuse, calling Game Freak lazy and boycotting the game. As time went on, more and more complaints started coming out, looking at other aspects of the series that have made the newer games fall into mediocrity. Even worse is when Game Freak admitted that Pokemon is given to their B team while their professionals work on original projects. Yes, you heard that right. Pokemon, one of the biggest media franchises on the planet, is not top priority. But wait, because it somehow gets even worse! Masuda responded to the criticism with a basic response that pretty much felt like a middle finger to the Pokemon fandom. This entire situation was absolutely mind-boggling, and to be entirely honest, I think both sides are in the wrong. Not on equal ground, but both sides deserve blame nonetheless. Game Freak not putting their all into this game and outright lying about their improved models is absolutely scummy, especially the latter. To quote Real Scott Lind on Twitter, "There's nothing wrong with reusing assets. There is something very wrong about lying about it. Hashtag Game Freak lied." It's also disappointing to see the series possibly continuing in this direction, especially when the tagline of your franchise is but at the same time, supposedly sending death threats to the devs and slamming them with sexual allegations is really uncool. And it's become a meme at this point that Pokemon fans complain about everything. Still, this is a very loud minority. There are still plenty of pleasant faces in the community if you look hard enough. And with Pokemon Legends Arceus being revealed, I think the series is being steered in the right direction. But with Sword and Shield's divisive reviews, Game Freak is gonna have to do a lot to make the fanbase happy again. When the Super Mario Bros. 35th Anniversary Direct dropped on September 3rd, 2020, fans were ecstatic to see what new products would be announced to celebrate. And for the most part, we got some really exciting announcements. 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, Mario Kart Live, and all-new Game & Watch? Two very big announcements caught people's attention, but for the wrong reasons. Super Mario Bros. 35 was a Battle Royale title in the same vein as Tetris 99. You play through classic Mario levels, kill enemies, and try to be the last Mario standing. And Super Mario 3D All-Stars was a compilation of Mario 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy, with a few graphical and controller enhancements here and there. These were amazing games that gamers couldn't wait to get their hands on. But then, something terrible happened.
Super Mario 3D All-Stars will launch on September 18th. A limited-run retail edition and a digital edition of the game will be available for a limited time until the end of March 2021.
These two games were going to be limited releases, only being available for a limited time before being discontinued on March 31st, 2021. I can kind of understand why the physical version of 3D All-Stars would be a limited release. It's a collector's piece. A bare-bones collector's piece, but a collector's piece nonetheless. But why remove the digital version as well? This was the one chance to finally play these games legally again, especially Sunshine. But nope, it's no longer on the eShop. Thankfully, it is still possible to buy physical versions, and no, I don't mean from predatory scalpers on eBay. If you look on Amazon or at local game stores, it's more than possible to find new or used copies anywhere from $50 to $75. So yes, you can still play this game, but the same cannot be said for Mario 35. That game just up and vanished on March 31st. The game's servers were taken down, meaning that it's no longer possible to even play the dang thing. 3D All-Stars, a compilation of 3 former Mario platformers. This was an original, free-to-play battle royale for NSO members. It had its own servers, its own original music, a dedicated player base, and now it's all just gone! Why? This was such a stupid idea! And the worst part is this wasn't even exclusive to Mario. Fire Emblem, Shadow Dragon, and the Blade of Light was finally localized on December 4th, 2020 to celebrate the series' 30th anniversary. This version of the Famicom Classic added a full English translation, fast forward and rewind functions, save states, and a bunch of physical goodies for collectors. However, this too disappeared from store shelves and the eShop on March 31st. Again, I totally understand why the physical release is kaput, even more than 3D All-Stars. Look at all these amazing celebratory trinkets. Of course this was a limited release. But why on earth would they remove the digital version? Yes, it's still on NSO, but it's only for Japanese accounts, and this is the vanilla version without the quality of life improvements the anniversary release got. Many people have compared these limited releases to the infamous Disney Vault. If you don't buy this DVD copy of The Lion King now, you won't get another chance for another couple years! Thankfully, when Disney Plus dropped, the Disney Vault was abandoned, and all the Disney animated films you could ever want are right there for you to binge. But here, we may never see these games again, especially Mario 35. Now, why do this in the first place? Nintendo CEO Doug Bowser claims, "There are various ways that we're celebrating Mario's 35th, and with some of these titles, we felt it was an opportunity to release them for a limited period of time." They've done very, very well. Super Mario 3D All-Stars has sold over 2.6 million units in the US alone, and so clearly consumers have been able to jump in and enjoy that. At this point, the decision was really made around that celebration feature and aspect. I can't speak to plans beyond the end of March. But this reasoning is total BS. You don't see other companies remove their anniversary celebrations from digital storefronts. Hell, even for Nintendo, games like Dr. Luigi are still available on the eShop, and the Wii re-release of Super Mario All-Stars was even given a budget reprint under the Nintendo Select line. There is no excuse for this, especially when 3D All-Stars was a $60 package with barely any effort put into it. All this wound up doing was impose an artificial scarcity and fearmonger consumers to buy these nostalgia trips. Unfortunately, this shady tactic worked. We all fell for it. 3D All-Stars is currently the 13th best-selling Switch title of all time, with over 9 million units sold. Many fans agreed that these moves were very anti-consumer, but right now, all we can do is hope Nintendo doesn't do this ever again, especially with Zelda and Metroid's 35th anniversaries coming up later this year. The Big House is a convention and tournament for competitive Smash Bros. Fans, having run every year since October 2011. The program typically runs in person, but because of the COVID-19 pandemic and social distancing being put into effect, the 2020 event had to be run virtually. For Smash Ultimate, this was easy to handle, just get some NSO subscriptions and hop online. But for Melee, the most beloved game in the competitive Smash scene, a different tactic had to be used. Since Melee was originally on the GameCube and didn't have online capabilities, a third-party mod was put into place. Project Slippy is a custom version of the Dolphin emulator that includes many improvements to Melee specifically, including rollback netcode, automatic replays, and built-in matchmaking. Unfortunately, Nintendo seemed to not like this very much. In November 2020, the Big House Twitter account posted the following message. The Big House is heartbroken to share we've received a cease and desist from Nintendo of America Inc. to cancel our upcoming online event. We were informed we do not have permission to host or broadcast the event, primarily due to the usage of Slippy. Sadly, all our competitions are affected. We are forced to comply with the order and cancel the Big House Online for both Melee and Ultimate. Refund information will be sent shortly. We apologize to all those impacted. Now, in a way, it is legally fair that Nintendo canceled this program. You need a ROM of Melee to run on Slippy, and there's no real way to tell which ones were obtained legally, like ripping it from your own game disc, or illegally via downloading a pirated copy online. However, just because something is legally correct doesn't make it morally correct. Because of the coronavirus, it wasn't safe for people to meet in person for this event. Going virtual was the only option for people to participate in this fun event and remain safe. Slippy was just a modification to add online play to the emulation, not necessarily patching the original game itself. I guess in their eyes, Slippy was a way to ruin their game and spread pirated ROMs, even though, once again, there's no real way to tell which ROMs were obtained legitimately or not. And also, Melee is like 20 years old now. Nintendo isn't making money off that game anymore. And then they forced the Big House to cancel the Ultimate event as well because of, I don't know, spite? This angered the gaming community, even those not super into competitive Smash. Seeing this harmless event doing their best to adhere to COVID restrictions and still bring people together, only to be forced to stop by a company's harsh, out-of-touch legal team? Yeah, that didn't sit well with people. Hashtag Free Melee and hashtag Save Smash flooded social media to try and save the competitive Smash scene, but little did people know things would get much worse, and much pettier on Nintendo's part. A month later, Nintendo's Splatoon 2 North American Open tournament saw a sudden change of plans. The live stream of the tournament finals was set to be cancelled, all because, get this, many teams used Melee and Smash-related names. Yes, I'm dead serious. According to Slimy Quagsire on Twitter, only 30% of teams had names in support of the hashtag Free Melee movement. Stuff like Meleetation, Wombo Combo, and Element Free Melee. However, this was enough for Nintendo to cancel the livestream and prevent viewers from seeing these scandalous usernames. So yeah, this petty action from Nintendo just added fuel to the fire. Hashtag Free Melee spread once again, and hashtag Save Splatoon joined the mix. Thankfully, fans of the game held their own unofficial tournament, called the Squid House in honor of the Big House event. It even offered a massive prize pool of money for winners and charities, much more than Nintendo ever gave out during their tournaments. Hey, if Nintendo themselves won't let these games be popular esports, leave it to the fans. As if 2020 couldn't get any worse, yet another horrible act from Nintendo was exposed, right around Smash Ultimate's anniversary no less. In one of the most messed up legal acts possible, Nintendo put out a cease and desist to the maker of the Etikons, a set of Joy-Con shells made in honor of Etika. For those who don't know, Desmond Daniel Amofa, or Etika, was a YouTuber and streamer best known for his Nintendo content, especially his wild reactions to game announcements.
Bayonetta! Oh!
Sadly, he struggled with mental illness for a good part of his life and ultimately committed suicide in June 2019. The internet was heartbroken. Everyone memorialized him for his kind off-camera persona and impact to the Smash community. And 2 months later, a product was created to honor him. The Etikons, created by Alex Blake, were monochromatic Joy-Con shells featuring Etika's logo and the phrase Joy-Con Boys, an affectionate nickname for his fans. All proceeds of the controller shells were donated to the JED Foundation, an organization devoted to preventing teen suicide. Although the first Indiegogo campaign flopped, Blake's second attempt was a massive success, raising almost $37 grand for the plastic shells. But as you can guess, Nintendo struck back in September of 2020, issuing a cease and desist on the selling of these shells. Their reasoning? The use of the word Joy-Con on the shell was copyright infringement. This news wouldn't pick up traction until December 6th, a day before Smash Ultimate's 2-year anniversary. YouTube user Joy-Con Boys uploaded a video titled, "Nintendo Hates Us," in which he calls out Nintendo and reaches out to Blake regarding this situation. If the Big House situation wasn't bad enough, this incident proved to people that Nintendo only cared about money and their copyright. not the fans, not mental health, and certainly not Etika's legacy. Many people even dubbed Nintendo the gaming villain of 2020. And frankly, I have to agree. Before we move on to our final controversy of the video, I need to say something. If you or a loved one is struggling with dark thoughts, please consider calling the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. Etika's death was an absolute tragedy, but we can try and prevent more cases like this from happening again. I'll admit, I've been a victim to depression and anxiety, and I know friends who have gone through these struggles as well. But suicide is never the answer. There will always be help for you, whether it's a professional doctor or just a loving family member. Again, please call the Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 to help save a life. Thank you for listening, and now, on to our final controversy. I decided to save this one for last because it's still ongoing today, from online criticism to countless lawsuits, all regarding a fault of the Switch controllers that can ruin a player's whole experience. Yes, I'm referring to the infamous Joy-Con drift. If you haven't experienced this, consider yourself lucky. It's guaranteed to happen to most, if not all, Switch owners at some point. Joy-Con drift is when the stick in a Switch controller, most often the left Joy-Con, will start to register false inputs, like moving all the way down when you're not actually touching the thing. Don't get me wrong, all controllers degrade over time. It's just natural for something to eventually wear down. But the difference here is it seems to happen to Joy-Cons much quicker than other controllers, especially by Nintendo standards. The Wiimote and 3DS are sturdy as bricks. I've dropped these things countless times and they still work good as new. Heck, just look at the DS, which was tested multiple times to make sure it could survive a drop from your pocket, or the Game Boy that survived a goddamn bombing. Now look at the Switch. The stick in the left Joy-Con will break if you just look at it wrong. It's not exactly sure what causes drift. Reports have thrown a number of possibilities out there, such as wear and tear on the internals or dust and gunk getting inside the plastic casing. So, how do you fix it? Well, a common idea is to use isopropyl alcohol, compressed air, or WD-40 to try and clean it out. However, this may just be a temporary solution to a much bigger problem. Many people have also sent their controllers to Nintendo for repair, myself included. However, even with the promise of Nintendo of America fixing or replacing your controller for free, chances are it will still begin to drift not long after. Your only other options are to buy a new pair of controllers at the outrageous price of $80, or replace the joystick yourself with repair kits off Amazon for less than 15 bucks a pop. Man, I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah, the Switch Lite! This thing doesn't have detachable Joy-Cons, but uses the same exact technology. So if your sticks start to drift, you need to send the entire console in, or else spend 200 bucks for a new one. So here's the million-dollar question. Did Nintendo get sued for this? Yes. Multiple times, in fact. The first case was in July 2019, Diaz vs. Nintendo of America Inc., and things just escalated from there. However, despite the lawsuits and investigations, they don't seem to be improving the hardware in the devices. Hey, Future Nin here. This video's been in the works for God knows how long, and during the editing of this specific portion of the video, Nintendo announced a new model of the Switch, the OLED model, with a bigger screen, a new stand, and all that. But despite the trailer featuring new cream white colored Joy-Cons, they're still the same old Joy-Cons. There's still no fix for Joy-Con drift in sight, and that just goes to show how big of a problem this is, that Nintendo's just not providing any solutions or answers or anything, and no one's happy. So, yeah, back to the video. But just wait, it gets even better. When pressed about this issue, Nintendo responded with the following. At Nintendo, we take great pride in creating quality products and we are continuously making improvements to them. We are aware of recent reports that some Joy-Con controllers are not responding correctly. We want our consumers to have fun with Nintendo Switch, and if anything falls short of this goal, we always encourage them to visit support.nintendo.com so we can help. In other words, we hear you complaining but aren't gonna do a pissing thing about it. Sorry, sucks to suck, I guess. This rabbit hole goes a lot deeper, so I encourage you to check out this Did You Know Gaming video on the topic for more information. It's hard to say right now if Nintendo will do anything to fix this Joy-Con issue, but I really hope something good comes out of all this.
So, these were just a couple of Nintendo's biggest controversies over the years. I clearly didn't talk about all of them. There's still stuff like Racist Jinx, the Nintendo Creators Program, striking down Fanworks, and most recently that whole Skyward Sword HD Amiibo debacle, just to name a few. I just included some of the biggest and most interesting ones to talk about in this video. It's really interesting and honestly kind of surprising researching some of the scummy things Nintendo has done, especially during the Switch era. Clearly, there are arguably much worse gaming companies out there. EA. But it's hard to ignore some of the glaring issues from this seemingly squeaky clean company. Don't get me wrong, I still love Nintendo's games. Look at my sweatshirt, for crying out loud. The developers are great people making great games. But some of the decisions taken by their corporate side are absolutely distasteful. Except for WiggerWednesday, that was hilarious.